just, pop up if you know the answer. What I want us to do is really talk a little bit about exactly what the rubric is. I think sometimes we get a little confused about the TAL framework versus the TAL rubric. The TAL framework is a set of principles, a set of ways of operating and thinking in order to be an effective leader. The TAL rubric then takes that, again, like I said before, it kind of codifies it into what teachers do. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that rubric. So question number 1, true or false? And if you have the answer, pop up. The primary purpose of the TAL rubric is to evaluate core member effectiveness. True or false, anybody? Oh, this is on your PowerPoint. Look at the PowerPoint. Sorry. Look at the PowerPoint. Okay, the answer, yes, it is false. Can someone kind of explain to me why is it false? Without looking at the PowerPoint. Why is it false? Thank you, Casey.
Well, it's not just, the primary purpose is for us to have like sort of a vision of what does it look like to be a really excellent teacher. So you can see exactly what actions you can do in order to improve your effectiveness. So it's not just to say it's good or bad, it's to improve yourself.
Great. And I think that's hard, it really is. Like you go into a classroom, core member advisor, you're going to go in there with your rubric, and you're going to go in there and you're going to say, this core member is VP on lesson planning, they're AP on investing their students, etc. And it is, in some cases, an evaluation tool. But the thing about it is that that's not its only purpose. Yes. It gives us a vision of what great teaching looks like. It kind of, again, it tells us exactly what does it mean to be a great teacher. It gives a continuum of teacher development. We'll get into the proficiencies later, but it kind of tells you this is what a good teacher looks like, this is what an excellent teacher looks like, and how you can move across that continuum. And then also, it's a tool that core members can then take and own themselves in order to focus on their own professional development. And so one without the other makes it kind of a negative thing. If you don't want to go get a test and then get graded and get an F, like that's not what it's for. But that is what gives folks a negative orientation to it and not giving them the power to use it for what it's used for. Question number 2. Put the components of the TAL rubric in order from most broad to most specific. Feel free to raise your hand. Shout it out. Thank you, Anna.
There's the principles, which are the most broad, and then underneath those and part of those are the each strand of that principle, and then the strands of the actions on the continuum.
All right, so the principles are, yes, the most broad thing. Those are our TAL framework, investing and planning and executing, etc. But then underneath that are the specific actions. So for instance, in planning, we're talking about planning purposefully. But what does that really mean? What are the specific actions that means? So that means you have to create assessments. That means you have to backwards plan. That means you have to lesson plan, etc., etc. And then the strands then take that and say, okay, so what does it mean to lesson plan? First, you got to develop key points. Then you got to find your method. Then you have to make sure your pacing is appropriate. Perfect. Uh-oh, where's that? Oh. Yes. Can someone read this key point for me, please?
The teacher's leadership rubric takes the TAL framework and breaks each principle into specific concrete actions. It then takes those actions and breaks them into discrete components, which we call strands.
Great. So again, like the TAL framework is something that has been researched. Like Teach for America has researched what is it that our highest performing teachers are doing, and then how can we make sure that we know exactly what that means in order for us to replicate that to the end of student achievement. The rubric in and of itself is something that changes because our knowledge is becoming more and more specific, more and more nuanced. We're understanding more and more, like what does it mean to have a good key point? What does it mean to have an appropriate method for a lesson plan? Whatever it is, like we're learning more and more, so the rubric itself is something that's changing because as our knowledge grows, so then is what we're going to give to our core members. But the framework in and of itself is something that we believe all leaders have. Question number 3. You have a handout. If you can just look at handout number 2, just a couple of minutes. We're going to then figure out exactly what's the common theme that separates each level of proficiency. And by level of proficiency, I mean those columns, from pre-novice to novice, to being proficient, all the way to different. So take 2 minutes to review that.